The conversation has been on the killings on the plateau over the past couple of days. It's been a very disturbing development where the Christmas festivities were overshadowed by the killings across Bokkos and Barkin, Ladi local government areas of the state. Some 23 villages came under attack, where 100 plus people have been killed so far, as the government at state and national level are trying to get ahead of the situation to perhaps lower the temperature and guarantee the observance of law and order in those areas. We had initially planned to talk to Dr. Yakubu, who is a conflict resolution expert and researcher, the country director of Mission 21. Apparently, we're having some challenges connecting with. Do we have Yakubu, Dr. Yakubu on the? Okay. Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Dr. Yakubu. Doctor, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Be interesting to hear from you what you make of the challenges that Plateau State is facing right now. It's over 2 decades now. It's a recurring phenomena. Year in, year out, these type of developments go into the history books. What are your thoughts about the cause and the persistent attacks that we see year in, year out?
It's quite a tragedy. Really sad what happened the past couple of days. And this is a recurrent episode here on the plateau, happening from one local government to the other. And now in the past few months, we have seen repeatedly this violence taking place around Bokkos, Mangu, and the fringes of Barkin Ladi. Now, this issue must be looked at within the context of Plateau State and Nigeria as a whole. Plateau State has witnessed vicious cycle of violence, as you have rightly said, for over 2 decades. And the violence has seemed unabated. Many efforts have been put in place to try to address and stem these tides of violence, but it will just stay calm for a while and come back again. And we're talking about the level of killing that we are seeing is something that is unprecedented. It's a level of cruelty, I would say a descent to anarchy, or what I would even characterize as something that is not common. You don't expect human beings to be able to carry out this level of heinous acts. And we are seeing this happening. Why is it happening repeatedly in Plateau State? First, I would say that there are issues. One of the things we have seen in our research is that trauma has become one of the drivers of this violence. People that are affected by an act of violence and they are suffering from the trauma have angst and bitterness and the desire to avenge for what has happened to them is strong unless something is done. And I will bring squarely here the question of justice. We need to look at justice in threefold. We need punitive justice where perpetrators are apprehended and they are brought to justice and they serve the punishment that they deserve for carrying out these acts. So far, the state has, when I talk about the state, I'm talking about the Nigerian state, has not demonstrated the capacity to apprehend people who perpetrate this act of violence and bring them to book. And that is why we are seeing the climate of impunity is persisting. And also we need to look at the need for restorative justice. People that are affected by this violence, even if you serve punitive measures against those who carry out these acts of violence, it does not address the needs of the victims the survivors. They have a need to regain their dignity. They have a need for psychosocial support. They have a need for rehabilitation. And that is what restorative justice is conversing for. And we need to come to terms with the reality that when there is an act of violence, it is not just an infraction. It's not just that the law has been broken, but it has also caused damage to people psychologically, economically, even lives have been lost. And those affected need some kind of reparation. They need some kind of support to be able to heal and to also come to terms with what has happened to them.
All right, Doctor.
The third element of justice is what I call transformative justice. We need to address the underlying causes of this violence. Now, this is very complicated in the case of Plateau State. Historic animosity between different ethnic groups in Nigeria is something that we as a federal state must rise up and address. Look at every election cycle. Look at the narratives. Look at the rhetorics that people say. And as if we are not from the same country, as if we are not the same people. This kind of narratives that you see even during politicking is a manifestation of the deep-rooted divisiveness that exists among our people. And our leaders, the ethnic leaders, the religious leaders, the community leaders, must become glues and not solvent. They must become glue and not solvent for national unity. But on the contrary, they are solvent for national unity. What they keep saying is to divide people. Every community leader, every religious leader, he's championing what is on his side and not looking at the other people. There is complete lack of analytic empathy when we engage with these issues. We take away the right of the other person. It is our own narrative. It's our own truth that is the truth. And this is dangerous. By doing that, we are stripping the other people of their humanity.
All right, Doctor,
and what I see happening in Plateau State is that this is something that we are all together in this. Whether you are Fulani, or you are Birom, or you are from you are Magam.
I like the fact that you said we are in this together, and that you have anchored some of your findings and suggestions on some of the research that you have conducted. So we basically are going to be speaking to facts as the case may be. Earlier on, we had the Commissioner of Information, basically espousing the position of government as far as this crisis are concerned. From your standpoint, and engagement, basically both with state actors and members of the community. Does it appear that we have a complete understanding of what these issues are and what we need to do going forward, especially with regards to peace building? Rather than just stand in one point and pause accusing fingers at the others, do we sufficiently have the understanding that we have a common destiny as a people, and that we will continue to coexist for a long time, and what is best is find a solution that works for everybody rather than continue to point accusing fingers and referring to your place in history and why your argument should be superior to the other person's?
No, I don't think that we are there yet. It's normal for people to have an approach, a position on this conflict, stating their own understanding of what has happened, and also defining the conflict in their own way. And this is a starting point for if we are going to have a transformation of this conflict, we have to engage with these antagonistic and divergent views that you have subjective understanding or definitions of the conflict and find a way to bring these people, the parties, to a common ground so that we can have an intersubjective understanding of what has happened. By intersubjective understanding of the conflict, I mean that we are able to understand the conflict from also the other party's perspective. And the danger is if we do not look at the conflict also from the other party's perspective, we end up demonizing and also coming up with blanket generalization like the other people are bad people, and that we are human beings, we are all God's children. But you know what? What happened on the eve of Christmas in Plateau State is what I characterize as 100% unadulterated evil. And this is how every Nigerian should look at this matter. It's not about a particular ethnic group doing something wrong. It's not about this. Now, the question, you see, when there is anger, I spent 1 hour yesterday weeping when I saw some of the videos. The question is, when they take the identity of the victims away, how do you feel? Or when the victims also belong to the other identity, how do you feel? Do you have a feeling of empathy for the persons? When it happens to them, does it catch your attention? The tragedy that we are dealing with in this country is that, and as you see, as the nature of our politics has always also been, is that we're also too preoccupied with something that concerns us, and we have an exclusive approach to issues because we feel we don't see it from the other person's perspective, and that is part of the problem. In a normal situation, what has happened here and what has happened in Zamfara, what has happened in Kaduna, what has happened in Benue should bring the country together. We will see a bipartisan or multi-partisan approach to the issue. But now what you have is that whenever this episode or events happen, violent events happen, you have people coming and talking about their pains. So the role here, I will give the responsibility to the federal government. The federal government has to do enough. The kinetic approach to the issue is not enough. We do indeed need security. And I believe that the security measures that have been put in place are not adequate. The troops are doing their best. I give it to them. Unfortunately, the matter is getting out of hand. They are dealing with the South. The West is breaking. They're dealing with the West. The East is breaking. They're dealing with the East. The South is breaking. And so the military is getting overwhelmed. But they also have to have a more systematic approach to the issues. One of the things that the military has to do more is in the area of intelligence gathering. You cannot parachute to gather intelligence. You need to maintain presence in the communities, in the villages. Our intelligence grid must extend and cover the entire country. Every village, every community must be covered. And how do you do that? You need interagency collaboration. The civil defense are there, the police are there, and other paramilitary agencies are there, as well as also what we have seen, the growing number of non-state actors that have organized themselves into vigilantes. How do you need to engage with them to gather security, to gather intelligence? You also work closely with the communities, because I have the belief that what is happening in Plateau is also partly what is from there are some elements of banditry going on, because the Fulani community and the other ethnic groups had lived side by side peacefully for many years, and they still get along. They are here in Jos. You'll see the Fulani are coming in to do their business. They live together, they interact, they have business. So, I believe that we need to also interrogate who are these so-called assailants. In around 2010, when we started this study, they were being referred to as unknown gunmen. And gradually we're trying to lift the marks and see, and we are calling them assailants. And, that is also for me part of the way for us to lose track of who is actually carrying out this act of violence.
Doctor,
And then there is also,
just to chime
over
in,
time,
because
what you
we're
have
running
is
out of
that
time.
you
But
lose.
I would love to get your take on how best, Doctor, we could break this circle of violence, right? Because I think that is what is the most important in the conversation. I mean, we are well aware of the history of the violence, not just in the Plateau, but as you stated, the growing concerns across different parts of this country. Nigeria is inundated with a lot of security challenges. But how do we go about breaking this cycle of violence, especially when you have spoilers like the criminal elements that you just mentioned, who are very good, as the case may be, at stoking violence, at disrupting the volatile peace that we have across some of these flashpoints. How do we do that? Because, you know, everything looks muddied up from a certain vantage point.
Okay, just quickly, Doctor, as you try to round up your thoughts on this, just so that we better manage time, I need to know, you talked about the need to have a hand on the situation. Are you looking at an external intervention or a Plateau solution? How do we go about, you know, assembling, you know, that nexus that would enable us, you know, begin to take control of the narrative?
I would say that first, at this present moment, what we need is the security efforts to stop the violence from spreading. That is the immediate need. And then humanitarian efforts also side by side with that effort to reach people that have been affected, the injured, those that are grieving, to reach them with psychosocial support, and those that have been displaced to see that they have a place to lay their heads. I tell you, about 6 a.m. when I checked the temperature here in Jos, it was 13 degrees Celsius. And that's pretty cool if you are not having good insulation. So this is really also another issue. We don't want to have complex emergency on our hand if people are quite getting sick. Then, you know, this typically when this act of violence happen, the military comes in, government will intervene to restore what they call normalcy. I'm not sure that is the right word to say normalcy, and then we go to sleep until it happens again. What I would advise is that after the violence has stopped, that is the point when the real work should start. And so the real work now, what we have is in immediate aftermath of the violence, what do we need to have in place? Humanitarian efforts are going on, and to make sure that also there are no reprisals here and there. On the medium time, we need to bring also leaders. It's not going to be just a Plateau solution. I tell you, this is one of the challenges of the federal government, of the Nigerian state as a federation. The federal government has to step in. We have to leverage also different stakeholders' capacities, like the different religious organization, Christian Association of Nigeria, Jamaat al-Nasr Islam. We need to bring the Miyetti Allah. We need to bring also the other ethnic groups, associations and platforms, so they can step in, reach out and talk to their people, talk to the people, and try to create that readiness to engage in a conversation. And then on the long run, government should look at what are those underlying causes, or these root causes of this conflict. Historic grievances are there. And these historic grievances, I tell you, they are nothing but they are things that are supposed to be passed. They are just the way that we tell history about each other. So inter-ethnic and inter-religious relations is characterized by this kind of attitude of animosity that we see. So we need to have ongoing work. NAREC was doing a very good job. And I believe that the federal government should give NAREC all the resources it needs to come into situations like this, because they are close. The religious leaders are close to the people at the grassroots, to engage with these people and begin to talk. And we need to also put in place processes of healing and reconciliation, element of restorative justice that can make people really heal from what has happened. There are conflicts that happened 50 years ago, and they are still there. The sky is still here. And so if you don't address the anger that people have, if you don't address the trauma that people have, we are now allowing this sleeping volcano to what? Erupt in the future. Right. And is going to continue to destabilize our communities. Okay. Therefore, I would like to see the federal government deploying the Institute of Peace and Conflict Resolution here to Plateau State. They have experts. They have done a lot of studies, peace and conflict impact assessment. This is one agency created by the Obasanjo administration. I don't know what this agency is doing. At one time, it was under the Ministry of Integration, another time, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because we still don't even understand what the agency is supposed to be doing. Right. The Institute of Peace and Conflict Resolution has a lot of work to do. Thank you very much. There is no need for, it doesn't make sense for us to be paying salaries and keeping that agency there. And then we have situations like this, and they are not involved, active on the ground, and in fact, leading efforts to bring about to bring the parties together to have some kind of conciliation initiatives instituted. So I believe the federal government has a role to play. And then there has been also
getting your thoughts on some of these issues and how best we can navigate it. The big question is, do we have the necessary tools, resources to address all of these questions? And I think most Nigerians will say, yes, we do have the resources, but are we deploying them to the best of our ability? And I think the answer is most likely going to be a resounding no. But we're going to have to pin it here for now. Dr. Yakubu, thank you most kindly for your thoughts, for your analysis, and we sympathize with you for any loss that you're connected to regarding the current unrest in the Plateau. Thank you most kindly for joining us on Daybreak this morning.
Thank you.